The ABC's election computer is up and running, ready to crunch the numbers as soon as the votes come in. And the one and only Antony Green is here, ready to guide us through it all.
And this is the starting position for tonight. Post-redistribution, post-by-elections, Labor 78, Coalition 57, 15 on the crossbench. Labor has a narrow majority. Can they hang on to it tonight?
For both parties, it's a race to 76 seats. That's the number you need for majority. Tracking their progress, Jeremy Fernandez is here at the big board.
We've plugged the ABC's election computer straight into this. 150 seats in total. Labor on the left, the Coalition on the right, and the pivotal crossbench right here in the middle. To get to 76, Peter Dutton needs to find 19 gains from somewhere over here, win 19 seats from this side of the board, and he wins majority government. It's a big ask. Can he do it, or will Anthony Albanese defend this red wall and retain power? We're about to find out.
Well, Antony, let's start. Set the scene for us. Where do the parties begin ahead of the polls tonight?
Well, look at the chamber. Now, since the last election, there's been redistributions in 3 states. Slight change in the numbers, down from 151 to 150. And we had the Aston by-election where Labor gained the seat. So in the 150-seat parliament, we go into the election with the Labor Party holding 78 seats, the Coalition 57, others 11, and Greens 4. So that's the starting point. If Labor loses 3 seats, which is a swing of about 1%, they're in minority position. If the swing is about 3.5 and is uniform, the Coalition can end up with more seats than Labor, but the Coalition need a swing beyond 5% to get into majority government in their own right. But with that size crossbench and with like 27 of the 151 electorates at the last election finishes and is not as Labor versus Coalition contest, it's rather difficult to talk about uniform swings. If either party gains or loses seats to the crossbench, it changes the mathematics of what they need to achieve majority.
That's one element that will keep you on your toes tonight, Antony. The other is the big early vote. So I think the latest count was, more than 6.5 million Australians voted early. I want to ask how that's going to influence the count tonight, what we need to keep in mind, and I guess your ability to make projections too.
Well, the issue is... what happens is, traditionally, the pre-poll vote is more conservative than the on-the-day vote. On-the-day vote comes in quickly on election night. We'll probably have nearly all polling places reported by 9 o'clock, but we may have no pre-polls by that stage. Now, the last election, with all on-the-day votes counted, the Labor Party polled 53.7, two-party preferred. At the end of the election, when everything was counted, it was only 52.1. The addition of all those pre-polls and postal votes brought Labor's vote down, two-party vote down by 1.6%. Now, if that gap is bigger this time than Labor's vote, when we get to that point where we've got all the polling day votes, their vote may fall 2, maybe even more than 2%. So we are predicting, based on projecting it will fall 1.6. But all of our numbers that we show as a nationwide figure are projections, assuming it will fall, the real number will fall. And what's going to happen is, will those numbers change once the pre-polls come in? So if we're a bit cautious in our early predictions, that's why, is that the polling day votes may be telling us one story, but the story may change when the pre-polls are...
It's a really important point. So we should expect early numbers to be better for Labor than the later numbers tonight.
Yep. Well, in terms of the projections you're doing, if you're looking at the raw numbers behind it, the Conservatives are doing very well at the start because they're mainly country votes that come in. But we correct for that problem of where the votes come from. So we have that projection, but what we can't do is correct for pre-polls behaving differently. So that's why we'll be cautious early on.
And Jeremy Fernandez is with us at the big board. Jeremy, take us through how this is going to help explain tonight's results.
The big board is one of the best features of an ABC election count, and we've brought it back again tonight. Now, this is all 150 seats that will be represented in the 48th Parliament of Australia. At any point during the night, we'll be able to look to this board and gauge the state of the race based on which colours are most dominant and where they're placed. So here's how we've sorted things. We've got the Coalition in blue, we've got Labor in the red, and right down the middle, we've got the crossbench, the largest crossbench in Australian modern political history. We've got grey representing the independents, we've got green for the Greens and brown for Bob Katter. Now, the safest seats here are on the far ends, the most marginal towards the middle. Now, Peter Dutton's task tonight is to hold 57 seats, any combination of 57 seats, but hold 57 and gain an additional 19 in order to reach that 76. Now, one way to do that would be to reach for the crossbench. The coalition lost a number of seats to the Greens and the Independents at the last election. So we're talking about seats like Curtin in Perth, Kooyong and Goldstein in Melbourne, Ryan and Brisbane and Metropolitan Brisbane, plus McKellar and Wentworth in Sydney. Now, even if they did manage to do that, they would still need to reach into Labor territory to make up their numbers. And this is the lowest hanging fruit, the most marginal Labor seats, starting with Gilmore and Menzies, which sit on margins of less than 0.5%. Now, if early in the night we start to see these seats being coloured in red, it means that Labor will have hung on to these seats, and that will have made the climb much steeper for the coalition to dig deeper into Labor territory, going after some of these seats in the second, third, maybe even fourth columns. But bear in mind that seats like Boothby, South Australia, Tangney, Pearce, Hasluck and Western Australia were Liberal seats until the last election when they flipped to red. Now, Labor's task tonight is to hang on to its side of the board, keep these 78 seats, and it keeps majority government. However, it doesn't hold that majority by very much, only 3 seats, which is why you've seen Anthony Albanese campaigning aggressively at seats on this side of the board, trying to win back Griffith from the Greens, Fowler from the Independent, going after Leichhardt, where the very popular local member Warren Entsch is retiring, and adding a bit of spiciness to Dixon. This is the most marginal seat in Queensland, held by one Peter Dutton. Now, if neither major party can make it to that 76-4 majority government, that is where they look to this crossbench, and we'll be keeping an eye on this too. Will they shrink? Will they grow? We'll find out soon, but that is the state of the contest tonight.
More than 18 million Australians will have their say tonight.
Has Anthony Albanese convinced the nation that Labor deserves a second term?
Or have Peter Dutton and the coalition done enough to unseat a first-term government? And will we see an even bigger crossbench in the next parliament?
Whoever prevails tonight will guide the country through an increasingly uncertain world.
The time for opinion polls and pundits is over. So let's get into it. This is Australia Votes.
Welcome back to the ABC Election Centre in Sydney. I'm Sarah Ferguson.
And I'm David Spears. The polls down the East Coast have just closed.
Ballots are about to be sorted and counted.
And we've got cameras in every state and the Northern Territory as it all unfolds.
Tonight, we'll be dissecting the campaign, the results and what's next.
Guiding us through it all, of course, Antony Green, our Chief Election Analyst. Anthony, how does it look at the start of the night?
Well, let's look at the chamber. The starting point includes the Aston by-election, accounts for the redistributions, which have lost a seat in New South Wales and a seat in Victoria and a new seat in Western Australia. So there's only 150 seats in this parliament, not the 151 in the previous one. If we look at the current chamber, Labor won 77 seats at the last election. It's now got 78, courtesy of the Aston by-election. Coalition's down 1 from 58 to 57 because of the Aston by-election. The others, which is Katters Australia, Centre Alliance and 10 independents, there were and 9 independents. There were 10, but North Sydney, the independent seat of North Sydney, was abolished, and there are 4 Greens. So that's the current position. Labor loses its majority. If it loses 3 seats, a swing of maybe 1%. The coalition need a swing of about 3.5% to finish with more seats than Labor, but still in minority, and they need a swing of something like 5.5% to get into majority. What I would say is that it's a bit hard to talk about uniform swing these days when, you know, one in 6 seats is not a two-party contest. If either side loses or gains seats to the crossbench, then how many seats they need to win to get to potentially being government or to lose government, that's affected by how many seats go to the crossbenches. So we're not just looking at the key marginals of this election, you're often looking at other seats which aren't in the traditional two-party contest.
Thank you very much. And we'll head back to Antony as we start to see figures reported. Reported with us at the big board now is Jeremy Fernandez. Jeremy, what are some of the key seats that we'll be watching tonight?
The most interesting seats tonight to watch will be down the middle of the board. Here's how we've divided up the board. Just a reminder, if you've just joined us, we've got the Coalition in blue, Labor in the red, and the crossbench down the middle here in grey, green and brown. Now, the most interesting seats, I think, will be to watch this middle section here. The most marginal seats on the Labor side, the most marginal seats for the Coalition, and the crossbench. As we said, the biggest crossbench in modern Australian political history. But it's time to say goodbye to the 47th Parliament of Australia. This is how it was. It's time to wipe the board. And as we go through the night, we'll see these squares individually being filled in. It'll be interesting to see which seats go first and how they're spread across the board.
Let's head back to the big board now with Jeremy.
There is nothing at this point to fill in on the big board, but I want to take you through the split in the previous House of Representatives and what will be represented in the 48th Parliament. Now, you can see the Coalition holding 57 seats there, 78 on this side for Labor. What is really interesting is the size of this crossbench. As we've said, it is enormous, and there's only so big it can get before it makes it impossible for the major parties to govern outright. So this is one of the races we're watching very, very closely tonight. And what it also speaks to is the appeal of third-party candidates in so many of these seats. This is a good time to bring in Casey Briggs, our elections analyst, to speak about how people are feeling, Casey, about the major parties.
Yeah, Jeremy, there's obviously an arm wrestle for government happening tonight, but this is a chart that I'm watching pretty closely. I've become a bit obsessed with this chart in the last few weeks. We made a whole television show about it, Swingers, catch it on ABC iView. But it's charting how the major party vote and the minor and independent party vote has changed over not just the last few elections, but decades. Look back to the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. The major parties, the Labor Party and the Coalition, would reliably get 40 or 50% of the vote. Look at 1990, that's when Ted Mack, the independent, was first elected in the seat of North Sydney, and since then, we've started to see that really decline. Now, at the last election, the major parties were getting 30 to 40%. And this line, for everyone else, minor parties and independents, 31.7%. We had nearly a three-way split, an even split between the Coalition, Labor and everyone else on the primary vote last election. So one of the things we're watching for tonight is, what does that look like in 2025? Will that independent and minor party vote continue to grow?
I want to ask you what took place here. Just give us a reminder of what's happened at the start of this slope.
Yeah, so this is a trend, you know, this is a long-baked trend that has seen minor party and independent vote go up. This, I think, that's the 2007 election, right before the 2010 election, when, of course, what did we have? The second hung parliament in the modern era in Australian politics. We had 6 crossbenchers then that were pivotal to determining that government, the then Julia Gillard-led government, with 6 crossbenchers. But as we've seen since, that is continuing to go up. The crossbench has gotten to nearly triple the size. We may well see it grow again tonight. Whether one party or the other wins majority or minority government tonight, the more that crossbench gets bigger, as you say, the harder it is going forward for majority governments to occur, and the more likely we see minority governments ahead.
The result of all of that counting we're starting to see, and let's test if the system is working. Antony Green, what can you tell us?
Well, we've got some figures, a little bit of a surprise where they're from. They're from... No, not from there, no. I don't know why it brought up McEwen for me. I must have touched the map by mistake. Let me go to the seat run. Why am I getting McEwen in my seat run?
All right.
Hey, we've got 111
we'll come back
votes.
to you, Andy. Look, everybody loves to watch for when the screen doesn't do what it's meant to be doing. So we've got it out of the way early.
We just did a paeon to democracy and it's got no votes.
I can tell you what it is, though. We got 111 votes. They're from the Haymarket Pre-Poll Centre for the electorate of Fowler, and they're showing a estimated 5% swing to the Labor Party. But I wouldn't judge this election on the basis of the Haymarket Pre-Poll.
No, but...
I think, Anthony... Oh, they're here a minute, gone a minute. just while we wait for you to find your feet, I think we've...
People say, oh, your screen does work. The screen does work. What happened?
He's here.
Sat there for 2 hours with nothing coming to it in the room. And what happened, it sort of slowly just stopped talking to all the other computers. And so we came to do something and it wasn't there.
Give it a kick.
Right.
Give it a kick.
Turn it off and on again.
It's always the network problems, that is. Once upon a time, everything was plugged into each other. Now everything is on the sort of communications network. All right, let's have a look.
Filling me full of confidence.
This is Fowler. These are these first figures for Fowler. They're from the Haymarket pre-poll, as I said. 2 Lee ahead. Diley is the independent sitting member. Labor's the new Labor candidate, and the Greens and the Liberals. But this is not a very representative. I mean, Haymarket is in the middle of the Chinatown of Sydney. But that doesn't mean it's necessarily representative of Fowler. The other seat I've got, and this one definitely isn't representative, this is Norfolk Island in the electorate of Bean. Norfolk Island for the last 2 or 3 elections has been part of an Australian electorate for the first time. And at this stage, David Smith is ahead. Now, interestingly, we'll see how it goes on the mainland, but Jesse Smith is an independent on 29.3, the Greens on 16, and the Liberal Party on 15. Now, as I said, this is several thousand miles away from the ACT. It just happens to be, for electoral reasons, it's part of Bean, but that's Norfolk Island's result.
Polls have just closed in South Australia and the Northern Territory.
Yes, and
Counting,
polls
yes.
will close in another hour and a half over in WA as well. Let's go back to Antony Green, who has some more figures for us.
I've got the first figure for Lindsay, which for a long time there was one of the key indicated polling electorates, but seemed to have settled very strongly in Melissa McIntosh's hands recently. Now, on those numbers, she looks in trouble. Holly McLean on 43.6. This is the Mount Druitt pre-poll voting centre, which is outside of the electorate. It's come in very early. So those figures look like the Labor Party's well ahead. But what we do in our system is we compare the figures booth by booth. So we know that this is a traditional Labor voting area. And so when we factor it into two-party preferred, we correct for that. And while there is a 3.7% swing to Labor, the Liberal Party are ahead. So while the Liberal Party look well behind on those numbers, on that one polling place as a comparison, there is a trend to the Labor Party in that election. It is only one polling place. It is a pre-poll, and it's outside of the district. But I just thought to show that to demonstrate to people that what we're doing is correcting for those early figures. Sometimes when we get to this graphic, we're always showing you a corrected figure, so it's got the best available estimate of what's going on. Now, the other election, I just wanted to see this. We may have absolutely no idea what's going on in this electorate. Now, just to explain there, I'll come to the setup page. Actually, that's the best way to do it. Andrew Gee has been since several terms as the National MP. Sam Farraway's the new national candidate. Andrew Gee resigned from the National Party caucus, National Party over
The Voice.
The party's position on The Voice. So he's been an independent since. Now, if I look at these votes again, Sam Farraway's ahead, but he's only got 28%. It's only 3 polling places, so it's very early. Andrew Gee's got 26. Kate Hook is an independent who finished second time to Andrew Gee. Now, that count, I think the Commission is doing national versus independent tonight. Later in the evening, we get a preference count. But there's a number of these seats where its sitting members resigned. In Monash, where Russell Broadbent is running as an independent against his former party, the Liberals, and in Moore in Western Australia, where Ian Goodenough is running. It may well be that with a sitting member having a significant personal vote, that we may not have a handle on those 3 seats. So if there's a lot of complexity in this election, there are 3 little extras that'll add to that complication. But at the moment, those first figures showing you that the Nationals are certainly not running away with Clare on these early figures.
Go back to Antony. Tell us early figures. What have you got, my friend?
This is just to show that we actually have early figures now. It's a bit hard to... It's actually a bit hard to work out what they mean, but at the moment, this is a nationwide on 0.3% counted. And as I said, we've corrected from where this data is from. It's got the Labor Party on 33.9, the LNP on 32. Now, these are from a disparate collection of electorates, and you get... You just get odd trends, early figures. But that's just to show you that we have got numbers, and it's why we're not putting a great store in individual seats at the moment. One Nation are doing well. The Greens are on 12%. The Trumpeter Patriots on 3.2. Others are 11. Just to look at the change in vote, and I have to say, people shouldn't take this too literally at this stage. This is just to show that the figures are there, and we're showing a 1.8% swing. But again, this is 0.3%. I'm just showing these to demonstrate that the numbers are coming in. You need to get to about 5% before some of these figures settle down.
You're watching Australia Votes live from the ABC Election Centre. I'm Sarah Ferguson.
And I'm David Spears.
It's 7 o'clock in the east, and the numbers of votes counted is about to pick up from here.
Yes, at the moment we have only a small tally in. It's in the thousands. Very normal for this time of the evening. It stands at about 1% of the vote counted, or just over 100,000 or so of the 18 million people enrolled.
There are 150 seats up for grabs. The magic number for majority government is 76. Because of the small number of votes counted, it's too early for us to fill out any seats in the parliament.
Again, noting the small numbers, Labor's two-party preferred vote, as you can see, sitting at 54% to the Coalition's 46%. This does represent a swing to the government of just under 2% nationally on those early figures.
Although there's a broad national trend there, some individual seats are already standing out. The Liberal-held seat of Lindsay in Western Sydney suggests an early drift away from sitting member Melissa McIntosh.
And Leichhardt in far north Queensland, it's looking positive for Labor too. A giant of a candidate in the former basketballer Matt Smith is running up some early points on the board in the seat formerly held by Warren Entsch.
And in central west New South Wales, currently held on the crossbench by Andrew Gee, he's faring well in early counting. So in town and country, a swing is on. It might be happening everywhere, but it's broadly in a direction that'll please the Albanese government this early in the night.
Let's get some of those further numbers now with Antony Green.
Well, I'm going to start with the national trend, and then I'm going to talk about Tasmania. Currently, the national figure is, again, it's only 1% counted. Labor's projected at 34, the Coalition at 32, Greens 12, One Nation 7. Now, I want to go and have a look at Tasmania, because that's a very different picture there. Currently, the projection's 37 for Labor, 22 for the LNP, 11.7 for the Greens, there's 16%. That's, I must say, that's Andrew Wilkie, because there's only 5 electorates and he holds one of them rock solid. If we look at the change in vote that's occurring there, is the Labor has a big swing to them, a big swing against the LNP. Now, that's flowing through to all of the electorates. All of the electorates is showing a significant swing. So it's not just 1 or 2 polling places. There is something else going on there. It's only 1.6% counted, 1.6. But I've done 2 elections, 1993 and 2004, when Tasmania were on daylight saving and the rest of the country wasn't. And the figures that came in Tasmania before the rest of the country started counting had a huge, really told you what the story was. So whether that will, only time will tell whether these figures are indicative. Now, what I do have, I actually have 2 seats I want to talk about. The first one is, this one's, I thought it was one on Braddon. Mal Hingston's on 36, and Urquhart 32 is a Labor candidate. Now, I'll look at this. Can I look at the percentage votes? Yeah, 10.5. We've got One Nation on 8. It's the change in vote here that matters. The Labor vote's well up, the Liberal vote's down. We're projecting the Liberal vote will be much lower than that percentage by the end. It's this disappearance. Jackie Lambie had a candidate last time,
that's it.
and there was Garland, the fisherman.
Is it Chris?
Craig Garland stood last time and got more than 10% of the vote. So that's complicating what's going on in Braddon. And I think we've got a 2-party preferred. 4 polling places showing a 9% swing. So the Tasmanian figures are showing some quite big swings at the moment.
Can I say
That's very...
I will go on to Wannon
just
before. Just simply because this is a seat where Alex Dyson is having his 3rd tilt at the seat. The moment Dantine is nearly just under 50%. We're projecting him to be 44, 45. And that starts to get into danger territory because the Labor preferences will flow very strongly to the independent, and the Labor vote will go up later in the count. So we'll be coming back to Wannon later in the evening. But that first figure there looks good for him, but it's a big increase to the independent coming from the other parties. That's a complex count. It'll take a long time to do.
Now we're going to go to some first figures, and we're going to start, Antony, in the ultra-marginal seat of Gilmore, where we have Fiona Phillips battling with Andrew Constance.
There's a lot happening here. We've got 18 polling places, 6% of the vote, which means there's a lot of pre-poll. It's actually over 50% of enrolled voters in Gilmore voted pre-poll. So that's probably 58 to 60% of all votes are pre-polls. So this is 18 polling places. Now, Andrew Constance is not polling well. This is a corrected swing from where the figures are from. And his primary vote is well down. There's an independent. They're just 67% of preferences, I'll come back here, 67% of preferences from everybody else is going to Labor. So if Labor's ahead on the primaries, they're getting a lot of preferences, so even if they're slightly behind. And just to look at the two-party preferred, an estimate, this is actually four actual preferences, and there's a 4.7% swing to Labor. But as I just said earlier on, maybe 58 to 60% of the votes in that electorate are pre-polls. They may behave differently and may turn around that swing, but they're encouraging figures for the Labor Party in Gilmore. Now, in Leichhardt, of course, Warren Entsch, let's do the setup here. Warren Entsch is retiring. Jeremy Neal is the new Liberal candidate, and Matt Smith, the former basketballer, Taipan's basketballer, is the candidate there. The votes that we're seeing there now, he's well ahead. We've got 9 polling places in. He's got twice the LNP vote, 12% there for the Greens. If you look at the change in votes occurring, that's a big increase in the Labor vote, the LNP vote down, and that's translating into a two-party preferred swing of 9.6%. So I think that's an estimate rather than actual, but there's another big swing there. Now, Leichhardt's another seat with a big pre-poll. So, you know, it may be we're going to be buckling in for a lot of swings early in the night, and then we'll have to wait for what the pre-poll does later. Now, Bean, this is not as encouraging for the Labor Party. We do only have 2.8% of the vote counted. But David Smith, the Labor member's on 39%. Jessie Price is the... she's got Climate 200 backing from memory. She's an independent there. The Liberal Party have recommended preferences for the independent. So, and I think we've got an estimate of preferences. No, this is an estimate of preferences which has the independent ahead in Bean. So that would be the 4th seat in 35 years that Labor has lost to an independent. Independents are traditionally much more of a problem for the coalition than for Labor. Let's go on to Bradfield. Now, this one is interesting. You've got 3% counted, Giselle Kaptarian, the new Liberal candidate replacing Paul Fletcher. She would do the setup. Paul Fletcher is the retiring member. Giselle Kaptarian is a Liberal member. Nicolette Buller is running for the second time in that electorate. If we look at the first preference votes there, as you can see, the Liberal vote's only 39%, and that puts them in a great deal of danger. And if that continues, they're in a great deal of danger in that seat. The change in vote there that's occurring, this is corrected for where the figures are from. Big drop in the Liberal vote, translating to a two-candidate preferred swing, which would deliver victory to Nicolette Buller. But at this stage, we're not calling that seat. It is only 3%. At the moment, that's what we're seeing. And now another seat which is not looking good for the Labor Party at the moment, is Franklin in southern Tasmania. Julie Collins, the Agriculture Minister, is the sitting member. Josh Garvin is the Liberal candidate. Peter George is the independent, former ABC foreign correspondent, many years in the Middle East. Well, he's dealing with salmon farming in southern Tasmania is his big issue in this electorate. And let's look at the votes here. As you can see, we've got 7 polling places in. He's got 32%, Julie Collins 31%, the Liberal 15%, Owen Fitzgerald 12.6%. Now, we don't have a preference count in this, and we will not know the result tonight if that's what the figures are, because the Commission is counting Labor versus Liberal in that electorate. And if Peter George is polling over 30% of the vote, we won't get any preference counts tonight. So at the moment, that's going to be, I suspect, unless the later figures change it, that's going to be one we won't know the result in tonight. So there's a couple of seats there where Labor didn't do particularly well, but there's some seats where it's looking very encouraging for them, admittedly with no pre-polls yet.
So we hang on to that word caution for the time being. We're just going to go over to Jeremy because I think he's got a change there on the big board.
Yes, a momentous part of the night where we can colour in the first rectangle on the big board. This one goes to Maranoa, the safest on the coalition side of the ledger. That's been retained by David Littleproud, the leader of the Nationals, Minister for Agriculture. Perhaps no surprise that the safest seat is the one that's being coloured in first. I just want to explain why we haven't coloured in any other part of the board yet. We are still waiting for the count to basically get up. So we're only going to start colouring in seats when we're in a position to make a projection if the count is above 10%. So that's why the board is largely empty at this time. It starts with a trickle, but the flood will come as the night progresses.
Let's get to Antony Green now with some more numbers for us. Antony, what have you got?
Yes, we're having there's a lot happening. It's we're struggling to actually illustrate it in some sense because there's a lot happening, a lot of seats, but some of them we're just doubtful about. The Labor Party is currently projected between 34 and 35% nationally, with 4% counted. The Coalition on 31, Greens on 12.4, others at 12. Now, the change in vote since the last election at the moment is Labor's up 2, the Coalition's down 4. And the two-party preferred swing is 3.1% with 4.6% counted. So we're seeing a lot going on. I just want to, I'll do Queensland as the state figures first. We need to go to this one first. Labor Party's projected to 31, the Coalition at 35, the LNP in Queensland, 12.8 for the Greens. If we look at the change in vote, the Labor vote's up, the LNP vote is down, the others 2.5. And Queensland is turning into a swing of 3.2%. Now, we're going to look at a couple of seats at the moment. To do that, I go to the map, and then I go to the seat run. The first one is Peter Dutton's seat of Dixon. Now, it is only 5% counted. It's a very low primary vote. Labor's primary vote is low. Ellie Smith, who's one of the Climate 200 backed independents, on 14%. It's 9 polling places. Look at the change in vote in those polling places. A big drop in the LNP vote and a rise in the independents. And I think, yeah, this is an estimate of preferences on those numbers. We estimate a 5% swing now.
Whoa.
It is 5.2%. But this is the sort of swing we're seeing in every seat at the moment. Here's Petrie, 8.2% counted. Emma Corner, who I must admit was one of the last announced Labor candidates, and to see her ahead of a long-serving Luke Howarth is quite a surprise. The change in vote there, again, it's that rise in the Labor vote, the LNP vote down, and the two-party preferred swing of 6.8. The one reason I'm not saying... what I will say at the moment is I've always said that when there's an election where nothing's happening, it's the hardest to call. When there's an election when you're not expecting a big swing to Labor, you're of course rather... You're surprised to see it actually occur. But that's what we're seeing at the moment. There's nothing which is looking good, particularly good for the Coalition at this stage. I'm not prepared to call it with, what's the national figure? With only 4.9% counted. But admittedly, with all those pre-polls, with all those postals, these are looking good for the Labor Party without being anywhere near calling this election.
No, OK, and that's important that we're still early, just under 5% of the vote counted, but none of it so far, none of it is looking good for the Coalition. That primary vote that Labor's sitting on there is, if anything, I think above what the polls were suggesting. It'll come down, you would assume. Once
if Labor finishes ahead on the primary vote,
yeah,
they will have a significant victory.
Yep.
Over to Antony Green.
Let's look at the primary vote. 4.9% counted still. Labor Party projected to be 34.6%. Coalition 31.3%, Greens 12.4%, One Nation 6.3%, others 12.4%. The change in vote that's going on at the moment is 2.1 up for Labor, 4.4 down for the Coalition, and smaller swings to the other parties. And all at the moment, that's translating into a 3.2% swing to Labor. Now, Labor is everywhere outperforming what the opinion polls are saying. Now, this projection here is based on the fact that by the time all the votes are counted with the pre-polls, we factored in that 1.6% drop in the Labor vote. So for that swing of 3.2 to come down to 1%, then there'll have to be a huge swing, a massively better result for the Coalition with the pre-poll votes. Now, it is only 5%, but we're seeing this all across the country at the moment. Now, before the election, there was a lot of talk about Victoria would be the Labor Party's worst state, and at this stage, it is the Labor Party's worst state because there's only a 0.6% swing to Labor in Victoria. If you look at New South Wales, there's a 3.8% swing to Labor. So let's take Victoria off and look at Queensland. In Queensland, there's a 3.3% swing at this stage. And I'll add Tasmania. Tasmania, this is a very odd figure for Tasmania. It's affected by the fact there's 2 seats where independents are well ahead, but there's still swings to Labor in both Lyons and Braddon at this stage. Now, again, let's put all that caveat there about pre-poll votes. But this is a significant swing that's going on, and it's going to have to be the pre-polls to turn around what we're seeing at the moment. But it's quite remarkable. Either all the Labor people voted on the day, and all the Coalition members have turned up at pre-polls, so I mean, we won't know till later in the evening.
I'm not going to push you to make a call. You'll call when it's right to call. But
they can only sack me.
Brilliant. But the fact that there is a movement, I know this is the on-the-day vote, but a movement to Labor in Victoria, and as you rather ironically said, their worst state is Victoria because the swing to them is smaller than other states. You've got to say, it's pretty hard to see how the Coalition wins government from here, isn't it?
Yeah, look, it's hard to see them winning government. I must say that. Whether this is going to translate to Labor having a win or a big win, it's going to take a lot more to go. But while we're just talking to the Greens, and I thought it was worth bringing up these figures for the 3 inner city seats. This is Griffith, and at this stage, the Labor Party is ahead, Greens are second, and the LNP's third. If those numbers continue, and we're projecting that they will finish in that order, then if that continues, then Renee Coffey will win that seat for the Labor Party, defeating the Green.
Goodbye,
The next seat is Brisbane. Same situation, Madonna Jarrett is ahead, Greens are second, the LNP third. There will be a lot of pre-polls in this seat and they may affect things, but that's the order at the moment. And on our current projection, looking at where the figures are from, it's projecting that order as well. Not calling those seats, but that's what the position looks like there. And in Ryan, I mean, if that continues, I'd be surprised personally if Labor leads in Ryan. But at this stage, Labor is ahead, Maggie Forrest second, the Greens third. So all 3 of those seats at the moment held by the Greens. If that trend continues, they will be probably won by Labor.
We're going to speak to Tony Burke in just a moment in his seat of Watson, Casey.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Tony Burke is standing by for us. He's held the seat of Watson in Sydney for quite some time, 21 years, since 2004. He's standing by to speak to us, but let's first take a look at the figures. Look, this is a really early count, just a couple of polling booths. There's been a bit of interest in the independent Ziad Bassiouni, whether Muslim voters would get behind him and there'd be some backlash against Labor over the government's handling of the war in Gaza. At this stage, Tony Burke's primary vote is down, but he will be easily re-elected to the seat on those figures. But again, it's an early count.
OK,
all right.
That's where we're up to.
OK, well, we are approaching 8 o'clock Eastern time, and that means the polls are about to close in the West, and we'll start to see some of those early numbers come through. Will Labor hold the seats it won at the last election? What about the new seat of Bullwinkle and Kate Chaney's seat of Curtin? Stay with us. You're watching Australia Votes live from the ABC Election Centre. I'm David Spears.
And I'm Sarah Ferguson. Let's get the latest on the count with Antony Green.
Yes, well, at the moment, can't bring up any graphics. We're currently got a sort of an Amazon server problem, so we actually haven't had any updates for a while. But the current, just looking elsewhere, currently there's about 13.7% of the vote counted. The swing is a bit lower than the one I was showing earlier. It's about, it's currently projecting to the Labor Party on about 54.8, which is about 0.7 lower than the projection I had earlier. That's because that count I'm using is much more progressed. But at the moment, we're chasing down Jeff Bezos or somebody at Amazon to try and find out what's going on. But yeah, there's nothing that I'm seeing on other sources of figures that are suggesting anything other than the picture we were painting earlier, though it is still patchy.
All right. Yes, OK. Other servers are available, and perhaps we wish we had one tonight, right?
Of independence.
Yeah, sure. Andy.
Currently, the Labor Party's on 30. I don't know the percentage counted because the Electoral Commission no longer publishes percentage counted on their website for reasons to do with, it's a long story. The Labor Party's on 37%, Peter George is on 24%, and the Liberal Party's on 17%, and that's with 27,000 votes counted, which would be about a third of the vote.
All right, we're back in Tasmania now, yes?
So at this stage, on those numbers, if that trend continues, Labor would hold Franklin.
Right.
The Electoral Commission has stopped counting preferences in that electorate because they believe that Peter George will be one of the final pairing. Yeah. But on the numbers, primary votes I'm looking here at the moment, he's not good enough to win because the Liberal Party did issue a how-to-vote card indicating preferences to the Labor Party.
Antony, can I just ask you about that seat in Brisbane, the seat of Ryan that we were asking Adam Bant about earlier, but does it look like the Libs have pushed themselves into second position there?
You'll have to give me a moment because I have to sort of navigate the Electoral Commission's website for the moment. At the moment, in that seat, the Greens are on 31, Labor's on 30, and the LNP's on 29. It's a three-way tie between those candidates at the moment. So it would come down to who finishes third.
Andy, what can you tell us?
The Labor Party is still going very strongly at the moment. Just trawling through the Electoral Commission's website, they've got more than 50 seats, but it's very unclear that the coalition's got more than 25 of them. There's 15 coalition-held seats, where the Labor Party is currently leading. Now, without all my fabulous technology, I can't see how close they all are at the moment, but everything that we were talking about earlier looks like it's still occurring with the later numbers. But at this stage, it's a bit hard. We haven't got any ability to turn that into a graphic for you. But at this stage, the figures are still looking good for Labor.
OK, so that's holding up. Do we know what national percentage of vote has been counted? Because I think earlier it was about 5%.
The Election Commission, I think, is about 16. The Election Commission doesn't publish a percentage on their website anymore.
But that's getting up a little higher.
So 15 coalition seats where Labor's ahead.
Where Labor's ahead at the moment.
Yep.
We'll see if that holds up. Let's go back to Antony Green for the latest numbers.
I've just been trolling through the Election Commission. The Labor Party is currently ahead in Hughes, Banks and Bradfield in New South Wales. Labor's ahead in Aston, Deakin, Menzies, Casey and Flinders in Victoria. Labor's ahead in Bonner, Leichhardt, Dixon, Petrie, Longman, Ford. There's a Mick now. I'm not sure which, and Bowman.
Not McPherson.
I haven't looked.
Dixon, Peter Dutton's seat, Anthony. What can you tell us any more about that? Labor's ahead there still?
Both major parties' primary vote is well down, but the Labor Party is currently ahead on that primary vote. If Labor's ahead on primary votes, there's preferences from the Teal Independent. I'd have to go and have a look at
OK, do either of you have any...
I've got
some intel on that?
The AEC page for Dixon up, currently showing projected two-candidate preferred at 57% to Labor.
57%. Based on how many voted?
It doesn't say, but it's looking at this stage a 9.57% swing in that seat, which makes us Canada, if that's what's happening.
Antony Green's got something important for us.
I'm not sure it's important. I can't see how the coalition wins from here.
That sounds important.
Well, that does sound important.
Is bad for them.
Don't let me interrupt you, Anthony.
Is that they've just gone backwards everywhere. I can't see... It is bad news everywhere for them. There's seats all over the country, all over the eastern states they're losing and they're behind in. No, they need to get 19 seats for majority government. They need to gain 10 seats for Labor. They're currently in the process of losing 12 to 15.
Yep.
The trend is all the wrong way. And I am a bit limited in the amount of data I can see at the moment, but it is impossible to see how this turns around. This isn't necessary. I mean, at the moment, it's a bit hard to work this out. Let's just say that. I can't see how the coalition wins from here. Now, does that mean the Albanese government is won? Well, yes, it's a binary contest. Have they got majority or minority? On these figures, they are going to have a substantially increased majority.
So you are categorically ruling out anything other than a minority or majority government for Anthony Albanese tonight?
Probably. I mean, I'm a bit hindered. Look, I can't see how the coalition gets into government from the numbers we're seeing at the moment. Therefore, the coalition can't form government. Therefore, Labor will form government in the next parliament. So you're helping me form my words by asking great questions.
You heard what James McGrath said. He thinks the pre-poll is going to perform a miracle.
So hang on, just to be clear, you're saying Labor has won? Either in a minority or a majority government.
For pre-poll to turn around from here, they'd have to have a lot of loaves and fishes, I think. I think it's a big swing that's on at the moment. I can't see how it turns around. Now, I'll put the caveat on, I'm a bit limited by the numbers, but it's just, this could be a big win for Labor, but it's certainly a win.
It's certainly a win for Labor. I think we can take that as Antony calling it as a win of some sort for Labor tonight. And look, this will be the final call that Antony makes, and he might firm up that call as to whether it's a minority or a majority. This is his last night with us as our chief elections analyst. But that would make... But that would also make it, for Anthony Albanese, the first Prime Minister to win back-to-back elections in more than 20 years. He has taken Labor from being behind in the polls before the campaign began to now being in this position where he has won either in a minority or a majority government. And that's despite the frustrations of voters over cost of living and all these issues that we've seen over the last 3 years. And we can see someone with the Antony Green T-shirt there celebrating that call from Antony Green just now. That would be at the Labor headquarters tonight, and they'd be celebrating that moment from Antony Green there.
At the moment, OK, I think Anthony's going to have... Actually, hold that thought. He's back. He's got some figures. He's a very happy man.
He's back.
Oh, we have figures. So we kicked off the backup system we normally use as a test system, and we're now using it as the main one. We've got just under 21% of the vote count. We're still projecting Labor 35, the Coalition 31, the Greens 12.9, others are 11.8. The change in primary vote that's occurring, 2.7, 4.6 down for the Coalition, and the two-party preferred swing is 3.9%. Now remember this, I was saying that that's a projection. The current figure is 57.6. We're projecting it will come down to 56.
Still huge.
Now, if the Coalition do better on pre-poll, it might come down to 55. It may get down to 54, but it's not going to get down to 53 or 52 on those numbers. So this is has all the potential to be a substantial victory for the Labor Party. And what I'll do is I'll draw the champ. Look, it is 20%, so I won't go too far into this, but we're pretty confident that Labor is definitely one. We've got the 176. That was the first time I've looked at it, I must admit, for a while.
That's a majority for those playing at home.
So, look, just because we haven't looked at these figures for a while, that's a pretty... I mean, as I said a few minutes ago, when I didn't have the figures right in front of me, the Coalition is not winning from there. They're not winning from 34 seats at this stage when the Labor's ahead in 76. Say you turned around 15 seats, that still gets the Coalition to 50, 50, maybe 60, but you know that's a long way behind at this stage. Again, we'll say 22.8. Let's look at that primary vote again at the moment. It's been pretty stable like that for a while. Those numbers will start to shift. If you remember the Queensland election, they were pretty sort of level pegging or Labor slightly behind before they moved. At this stage, Labor's substantially ahead before that shift occurs.
That would be the lowest Coalition primary vote ever.
Yes.
It may come up a little once the pre-poll comes in.
Do this as well? This is changing. Now, I just had I haven't been through every one of these seats to double check, but we've got Banks where the Labor Party's ahead, Bass, Independents gaining Bean. I haven't looked at the numbers there, but Labor's holding Bennelong, winning Bennelong, gaining Bonner, Braddon, Brisbane. There's a whole page there. It's all red.
So you're knocking out David Coleman, the Shadow Foreign Minister, gone, Bridget Archer in Bass as well.
Michael Sukkar.
That's because you haven't looked.
No.
They are struggling to hold on. And if they're struggling to hold the seats they hold, they're not winning the election. Well, the story at the moment is the opposition leader seated of Dickson. At this stage, Peter Dutton is on track to lose his seat. Now, I think I can... let me see. I think they've got the seat ready for me. Dickson, 32% of the vote counted. Now, this is basically nearly all of the on-the-day votes. Labor's ahead on 34, Peter Dutton's on 30. The independent, Ellie Smith, is on 13. The Greens are on 8.6. Now, we haven't got as many preference counts in, and I'll just show that. It's a 9.2% swing. I took the preferences that we've got from those 23 polling places, applied it to the larger number that we got primaries for, and it turns out that the swing is about 10% still. There is about 70% of preferences flowing to the Labor Party. I think that independent, every time you get an independent on the seat, you get this strong flow of preferences. But at this stage, we're saying that Ali France at her third attempt should go on to win that seat, and Peter Dutton is naturally cautious, almost certain to lose. But we've called it. We believe that Ali France will win Dickson.
For now, we're just going to go and look at some seats that are flipping in New South Wales, starting with the ultra-marginal seat of Bennelong. Antony,
Jerome Laxale, his seat has become marginal Liberal in the redistribution, up against Scott Young. There's been a lot of noise about this campaign. Let's look at the first preference votes here. And you'll see there's a big increase in the Labor vote, 46.7. Now, some of that is because a large part of this seat had an independent last time. So probably about 10% of that is the disappearance of the independent. But still, their vote is up. And if you look at the change in, I think we've got the two-party preferred swing, there is a 10% swing there. The Liberal primary vote is down, and there's a 10% swing. And in the seat with a margin of 0.02%, I think it was, that is a Labor gain.
Let's have a look at the seat of Banks in Sydney's southwest, held by the Shadow Foreign Minister David Coleman. Jisoon is the Labor candidate who migrated from Malaysia. He worked for DFAT, was posted in Afghanistan, worked in Kevin Rudd's office too.
Yes, and look at the first preference votes here. Liberal and Labor are basically neck and neck there. We've got 12% with the Greens, a small vote with One Nation and the Trumpet of Patriots. You look at I think we're going against the two-party preferred swing here. What we're seeing is a swing there of 6.3%, the Labor Party on 53.7. Now, the count's a bit slower in that one. There may be some swing back, but that's a pretty substantial swing, 6.3. And Jisoon's, we're projecting, will be 53.7. He's actually currently on 53.5. We're projecting his vote will go up from here.
Antony, in the Sydney southern suburbs, the seat of Hughes that was held by Liberal Jenny Ware, what's happening?
Well, this is a seat I always had a rough eye on because it's been heavily affected by the redistribution. It had a series of areas around Campbelltown and Ingleburn added to the electorate, which halved the margin. Jenny Ware was elected last time. It was a very late pre-selection for all those reasons everyone's gone into with the 2022 election. It was a former seat of Craig Kelly. Now, she was elected last time, but this time her primary vote, we're projecting she'll be behind on the primary vote in this contest, and that translates into a two-party preferred swing of 8.9%. I mean, Labor hasn't held this seat since they lost it in 1996. Right. This is the classic tradies seat, which Labor hasn't been able to win since they lost it in 96. But at the moment, at this stage, it looks like David Moncrief, who I must say was not one of the higher profile Labor candidates. This is not a seat that I don't think Labor, I mean, it was a seat I had my eye on just because the redistribution made major changes. But at this stage, for Labor to win back Hughes for the first time in that's nearly 30 years, that's a big change.
It is. Let's go to Richmond. The Greens are going to be celebrating this, Antony. This is Justine Elliott's seat, the Labor local member there in northern New South Wales. The Greens candidate, Mandy Nolan, is a comedian, author, writer, artist and teacher.
Yeah, I don't think they'll be celebrating this. I thought I tried to override this result. It's actually still coming up at the moment. If you look at the first preferences here, and we won't go on to the swing on this one. At this stage, the Greens are ahead on 33.9, Labor's on 27, and the Nationals are on 18.7. Now, at the moment, I am projecting on those first preferences that the Greens will slip to second on 27.5. Right. The Labor Party will lead on 29.9 and the Nationals will finish third on 24. Now, at this stage, I would say if the Nationals are third, Labor wins that seat, not the Greens.
So you think Labor holds Richmond?
Given the way those figures bounce around. One interesting thing here, last time, the thing that got Labor over the line was the Libertarian Party, who was known as the Liberal Democrats, ran last time, and they got about 7% of the vote, probably because of name confusion. There was no Liberal on the ballot paper, people voted for them. Right. This time, under the new name Libertarian, they're under 2%. Okay. So those strong flows of preferences that went to the Nationals and Labor last time probably won't be there. The Nationals finished third on the day and pulled ahead. There's a lot more counting in Richmond. I'll put that in doubt. It's not a green gain, I will stress that.
Okay.
It has been a while since we took a look at the big board, and I did promise you when it came it would be a flood, and it has arrived in the most dramatic way. Now, let me just take you back to the start of the night. I told you the Coalition had 57 seats. They needed to gain 19. But look at the shape of this board, how the colours on this side have diminished and the colours on this side have gained. Let's just go through them. How Labor has shut the door to the Coalition being able to claim victory here. This is the column of Labor marginals. They have held to every single one of these we are projecting. Only a few blanks here. Bullwinkle and Tangney, these are in Western Australia. The count isn't quite high enough for us to be able to project a winner in those seats. Now, we go further this way. We've got Bean going to Jesse Price, but otherwise, Labor's largely hung on to this side of the board. Richmond, the count is still advancing there. We're not in a position to be able to give that away just yet, but certainly on the count as it is right now, we're looking at Richmond. The Greens are ahead in Richmond. Now let's take a look at the crossbench. The crossbench largely staying the same. However, the seat of Brisbane has gone from the LNP to the Greens and now looking like it's gone to Labor. One seat they worked very, very hard to gain off the Greens. It's the same for Griffith as well. Griffith, they had gone very hard on campaigning there. They have, Labor has gained Griffith, it looks like, as well. Now, let's talk about the incursion onto the Coalition side of the board. This is perhaps the story of the night. Dickson, which we entered the night on a margin of 1.7%. This is Peter Dutton's seat, and it appears that he has lost that seat. Now, if you heard from James McGrath, we're going to wait for the full numbers, the pre-polls to come in, but it looks very difficult for Peter Dutton to regain his seat there because the numbers are very much swinging against him. Labor has also managed to claim the most marginal seats on the coalition side. So we're talking about Deakin, Bennelong, Sturt, flipping those red. Bass, flipping it red. Banks, Leichhardt, where Warren Entsch is departing office, right into Petrie on a swing of nearly 9%. That is how far Labor has reached into the coalition side of the board. And so when you think about how many seats the coalition needed to gain from this side of the board, doors closing here, doors closing here, and doors closing on its own turf as well. So that is the state of play on the big board on the 150 seats. We're still waiting for numbers to come in, but this is looking like a very, very strong night for Labor.
We are going to check in now with Dan Tehan in his seat of Wannon, as we mentioned, with Peter Dutton gone. Who will be the Liberal leader? Casey.
Yeah, David, this has been the seat of Wannon in regional Victoria, a massive seat that's drawn a lot of interest because of the run of an independent, Alex Dyson. Dan Tehan's standing by to speak with us. Let's first have a look at the figures. Dan Tehan is on 43.1% of the primary vote. He is in good shape. Alex Dyson with just under a third of the vote. I want to show you the change in vote on this seat, just to show you what's happened here. Alex Dyson is up just over 11%. He has seen substantial growth in his primary vote, but Dan Tehan's vote is only down by 1.1%. We do have a swing we can show you because Alex Dyson's run before. It's actually shaping up as a small swing at the moment to Dan Tehan. He's in very good shape to be re-elected as the member for Wannon.
We're going to check in on some more of the seat results from Melbourne because there are some fascinating contests there. Let's start, Antony Green, with the seat of Deakin, held by Michael Sukkar, or was held by Michael Sukkar. How's it looking now?
Well, at the moment, there's a 4.4% swing to Labor going into this seat. As you can see there, Michael Sukkar against Matt Gregg. These two ran against each other at the last election. At this stage, Matt Gregg is ahead on primaries, and with a significant vote there for the Greens, that will work in his favour. The Liberal primary vote is down. Again, that might come back towards level pegging with pre-poll votes, but that doesn't seem to be able to turn around a 4.4% swing. This stage, 54.4. This was absolute line ball before the election. At this stage, it looks like Matt Gregg will win that seat.
Well, this is an extraordinary seat. This is Aston. I don't think there was a single Labor person I spoke to, and I don't know about my colleagues in the weeks preceding the election who thought they were anything like a chance. It was gone as far as everyone I spoke to said.
Yeah.
Anthony?
And to say on those numbers, that is the by-elections margin that's shown there. The figures we're about to show is compared to the last general election when it was about a 48% Liberal seat. So at this stage, Mary Dawes ahead on first preferences, again with a big vote there for the Greens. And there's a two-party preferred swing of 8% since the last election. So, I mean, you probably got on top of another sort of swing. You've also got perhaps the sitting member factor has worked in the favour of Mary Doyle there, but that's quite a remarkable swing. That's with half of the primary vote count. Labor is going to be ahead on first preferences with a big vote for the Greens, so that's not turning around.
And the seat of Menzies, held by Keith Wallahan, or it was held by Keith Wallahan. We've mentioned earlier in the coverage tonight one of the hopes of the future for the Liberal Party, a potential future leader he's often seen as by some of his colleagues. He's up against Labor's Gabrielle Ung, a lawyer, a former public servant.
And at this stage, Menzies is Labor's ahead on primaries. If over these three seats we just looked at, this is the one that may yet turn around. Gabrielle Ng's ahead there, just ahead. We're projecting that he'll finish in second place and the Liberals will lead on first preferences, but with under 40% primary. And that translates into a two-party preferred swing of 2.9%. This was a notional Labor seat due to the redistribution. But at this stage, I mean, if the Liberal Party, if this does go on and the Liberal Party lose Keith Wallahan, that's a significant bit of talent the party's losing.
Anthony, what have you got for us?
Well done.
We're about to do a couple of Tasmanian seats because the results are down there are extraordinary.
Yeah.
But first, I'll say a couple of things. First, it's clear the Labor has won a majority and they may well have a substantial majority.
Wow.
So I'll just make that absolutely clear. Secondly, in Victoria, All those seats that were mentioned, Hawke, McEwen, Gorton, there's a swing to Labor. It may come down with pre-poll votes, but there's certainly no swing to the coalition. And in Bruce, there's a 12% swing to Labor. So that was another seat that was mentioned. And there's that swing all across Victoria, and it's the smallest swing in the country. Labor has won Sturt for the first time since the 1960s.
Wow.
So they've gained that extra seat in South. I haven't looked at Boothby. I presume it's gone the same way. Substantial swing. Monash, no idea who's going to win Monash tonight in Victoria. So it's some quite extraordinary results, but we need to go to these 4 Tasmanian
Yeah, let's have a look at those. Shall we start with Bass, Bridget Archer's seat of Bass in the northeast of the state, covering Launceston. She's up against Jess Teasdale, a teacher in Launceston.
Yeah, and she spent many years teaching in the Northern Territories, moved back to Tasmania. This was the ejector seat. Bridget Archer broke the rules last time by managing to get re-elected, but not this time. 40% Labor, 30% for Bridget Archer, 13% with the Greens. Some of that loss of Liberal vote may have gone to some of the One Nation by the look of that, and there's an independent there. Let's just look at the swing, the two-party preferred swing here. There is a 10.6% swing. Now, that might come down 1% or 2%, but still, that's a double-digit swing in Bass.
All right, let's go to Braddon, where the Labor candidate was Anne Urquhart.
Yeah, and Anne Urquhart's given up a Senate seat to run here, and she was a long-term, so she resigned a seat which she holds for another 3 years at Anthony Albanese's urging. Gavin Pearce is the retiring member. Mal Hingston is the new Liberal candidate, but he's not going to be the new Liberal member for Braddon. It will be Anne Urquhart, transferring from the upper house. At the moment, she's on 38.9. The Liberal vote has crashed by 13% on first preferences on 31. We've got over half of the vote counted. Let's look at the two-party preferred swing here. 15%.
Wow.
So something's going on in Tasmania. Let's look at Lions, which is... Oh, sorry, I'll let you do this.
Well, I was just going to say, Liberals have been wiped out of Tasmania based on this. And now let's look at Lions. This is in the centre of the central seat in the state. And Brian Mitchell's going at this election. Beck White, the former state Labor leader there in Tasmania, up against Susie Bauer.
And Rebecca White, she's led the poll in Lions at the last 3 state elections, the former Labor leader. She's romping to victory here. You can see they're 43 to 25. The Liberal vote is just well down, more than 11% down on first preferences. Look at the two-party preferred swing here, another double digit. So these are just extraordinary results in Tasmania. You know, these are just amazing results.
So, should we bring in Cosentoni here? Because...
We'll just do one more.
Oh, sorry,
One more. This is... Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, Franklin, down the bottom of the state. This is the one where earlier on Labor was in a bit of trouble. Julia Collins trying to hold the seat against the independent Peter George.
And I think they still are in trouble, but we'll just... I think we'll look at the first preferences. I think we'll stay there at the moment because we haven't got a winner for this. Julia Collins, 38. Peter George, 23. The Liberals, 17. Greens, 11. Now... Peter George, the Liberals directed preferences to the Labor Party, so that will make it tougher for Peter George to close a 15% gap. Even if you give them all the Liberal votes, all the Green votes, sorry, that still puts them behind Labor. And even if, you know, just a reasonable split of Liberal preferences would re-elect Julie Collins. So she's had a bit of a scare, but at this stage, I think she's been re-elected.
But the celebration was clearly there as well. And this is an historic Labor moment. The first Prime Minister since John Howard, but the first Labor Prime Minister since Bob Hawke, of course, to win back-to-back elections. And the two-party preferred vote for Labor at the moment is around 56%. Now, that may come down as more votes come in, but at the moment, that's a higher result than anything Bob Hawke ever got, anything Kevin Rudd, or you'd have to go right back to Chifley, I think, to get a two-party preferred result that high. First-term governments don't normally extend. What we're seeing here, you'd have to call a Labor landslide. They're sitting on 86 seats at the moment, and to go into a second term with such a big increase is historic. Antony, what can you tell us?
Well, what I'm going to do is wrap up what we're seeing as the results of the month. The Labor Party is predicted to finish on 35%, the Coalition on 31%. So just to point out, that's only 66% of the vote between the two major parties. There's a big vote with other parties. The Greens are on 12.7%. I'll come back. I'll just mention, I'll come back to the Greens when I talk about the chamber. Big vote for others. If we look at the change in primary vote, for the blocks at this election. Why is that not working? That's the wrong graph. This is what I'm after. The Labor vote is up 2.3, the Coalition down 4.6. One Nation up a little bit and others up a little bit. And all that's translating at the moment into a swing of just under 4%. Labor will have roughly 56%, which if they finish up above 55, that is a historically high result. Now, it's a bit hard to compare it with election results from 30 years ago when both major parties were getting in the mid-40s and they're now getting in the mid to low 30s. But two-party preferred, that's what it is, but it's not turning into the number of seats that you once would have expected. If we look at the chamber, we currently have a definite number of seats, which is 86. 86, 38 for the coalition, so under 40. Now, they'll get above 40, but that's still down from the high 50s last time. And, I mean, when you're getting under 50, that's a down adjustment. Now, I've got no Greens there at the moment. I'll explain why in a moment. We've added a few more seats to make it likely, and the coalition 38. If Labor ends up in the 87 to 90 range, that was the size of the number of seats that Tony Abbott won in 2013. From different sort of first preference votes, but very similar. The reason there's no Greens there at the moment, Melbourne's in doubt. I suspect they'll hold it. Wills, there's a strong chance the Greens could pick that up from Labor. I think at the moment Labor will gain both Brisbane and Griffith. Ryan, I think the Greens might be more likely to win. But so the Greens have lost those two seats. I haven't looked at Richmond recently, but I think Richmond is less likely to be a Greens win. It's very difficult. It's an extremely difficult seat to call that. But just looking at some of the state seats around the country, right? A lot of talk of Bruce in the election. There's a 12% swing to the coalition, to Labor, sorry. All those seats in Western Melbourne that were being talked about, McEwen, Hawke, Gorton, there was a swing to Labor. They're potentially picking up Menzies and Deakin in the eastern suburbs. So where was that big wave that was going to sort of sweep the coalition in the government? It didn't happen. And in fact, they've gone backwards. They've gone backwards in Queensland. They've gone backwards in New South Wales. I mean, a huge double-digit swing in Tasmania. They've lost Sturt in South Australia at the moment. I haven't seen any big changes in Western Australia, but they've got a terribly low primary vote in Forest, so they'll probably hang on. Just all round, it's just a disastrous result. And it's one of Labor's biggest ever victories.
Antony, we're going to run through some seats now. We'll start in Sydney's North Shore with the seat of Warringah, held by Zali Steggall.
Oh, she's been easily re-elected. I mean, she had a double-digit margin after the last election. She's increased the margin even further. She holds that seat with a substantial 12% margin, so there's no difficulty there for Zali Steggall.
Yes, because we've been looking at whether this is going to affirm the presence of the Teal independents that arrived 3 years ago. What about the seat of Wentworth, Allegra Spender, up against Ro Knox?
Oh, she's won easily. I mean, when I say she's increased her vote, the electorate has increased in areas, so that's a big difference. But she's ended up with a 4% swing in her favour. So Allegra Spender has absolutely no difficulty retaining that seat and is back in the parliament.
And then I think we're off to the seat of Mackellar. Just took me a moment there. This is a seat on Sydney's Northern Beaches, held by another Teal independent or community independent, Dr Sophie Scomps.
Significantly, all these Teals won from second place last time. This time they're winning from first place. And Sophie Scomps will be re-elected in Mackellar. She's got a 2% swing to her and has got a margin over 5%.
James Brown, the candidate there, the son-in-law of Malcolm Turnbull.
Former
son-in-law of Malcolm Turnbull. Goldstein let's look at the Teal seats down in Melbourne there. Goldstein, Zoe Daniel up against Tim Wilson trying to win his old seat back.
Tim's ahead on first preferences, but Zoe Daniel will get a strong fold preference. I'm just looking here. We've got a preference count in 35 of 45 polling places, and we're projecting Zoe Daniel will hold that seat. I'm just looking at it. It's perhaps, I think she'll win that one. At the moment we're giving it away. I'll have a bit of a look at those numbers later in the evening, but certainly there's no big swing there to the Liberal Party. Just a small one.
Let's have a look at Kooyong, one of the most fiercely contested seats in Victoria.
And the two lead candidates, Amelia Hamer and Monique Ryan, are equal on first preferences. And with Labor and Green preferences to flow at above 80% to Monique Ryan, she will go on to win that seat and with a swing in her favour.
And what about Kate Chaney over in the West in Curtin? It'll be early days in the count there, I know, but how does that one look at the moment?
At this stage, she has increased her vote. And the preference count we've got is suggesting that she'll go on to win that seat as well. Wow. So Curtin looks like it's staying where it is.
Wow.
just as a little sign there, currently Labor is within a whisker of winning Barara. Fowler, last time I looked... I'd be surprised if they win Barara in the end. The Liberal Party will have a better postal vote campaign. And even as I look now, it looks like the Liberals have firmed up. Fowler is still in doubt last time I looked. No, looks like it's firmed up for Daly, but
all right.
There's 30... Well, half the vote was pre-poll. So
we've got a couple more teal contests.
Couple more, yes, we've got...
Oh, sorry.
That's OK. We've got Bradfield, Sydney's North Shore, retiring MP Paul Fletcher up against the Teal Independent. What happened?
Still more counting to come, but at this stage, Nicolette Buller is very strongly positioned. So she's 10% behind there on primaries, but you've got 25% there with the Greens, and 80% of those will flow to her. Our current model has her ahead on the raw numbers, and we're projecting she'll get to 52. So by the end of the evening, that might come back a bit more into doubt. But again, that's a good result. And if the Liberal Party lose Bradfield, you know, this was once the great bastion of the Liberal Party in northern Sydney.
And what about Monash, Melbourne's, in eastern Victoria there? This is a tricky one. Russell Broadbent was the Liberal, lost pre-selection, running as an independent. You've got Mary Aldred as the Liberal candidate. You've got another independent in the mix there as well, Deb Leonard. How's that look?
No, I have no idea. I mean, well, just look at those first preferences. I mean, no, Russell, I had no idea. They'll be counting that one for days.
OK. Annabelle just mentioned Flinders. I don't know if you can scramble anything on that for us, Antony. What are you seeing there, Annabelle?
The Liberals will retain it.
Yeah. It looked like a strong showing from the independent that seems to have translated back into a narrow...
No, actually.
Retain?
I can actually bring Flinders up here.
Yeah, there's a big swing to the independent there, but interacting oddly with the... Sorry, I don't mean to crab-splain to you, Antony.
We don't get to do this too many more times, so we want to put you on the spot.
Sorry, I must see. It is... No,
Flinders.
it's grey.
Flinders.
Flinders.
I want to look at grey, actually, because grey was what I thought you were talking about. OK, now, Rowan Ramsey's retired. The Liberal vote's 35%, Labor's 23%, Anita Kuss 16%. No, I don't think she's going to catch up. Maybe it was Flinders I was looking at on the screen. Let me find it. She's down here somewhere. Might as well use this technology one last time.
Peninsula.
There we are. Ah, yes. Flinders is the state seat within the middle of grey. That's what I was confused by.
You're thinking of the Rangers. I know where you're going. It's a South Australian thing.
Yes, that's very interesting.
That is.
Zoe McKenzie will have difficulty if those numbers continue, because if Labor... Green preferences will probably favour Ben Smith. Yeah, that's a disaster if that happens.
So this is a story that's occurring as, you know, the future generation of Liberal leadership, which includes that MP, Zoe McKenzie, and Keith Wallahan next door.
If after this election there are people arguing that the problem for coalitions, they didn't go further enough to the right and they lost votes to One Nation, it's not One Nation and those parties that lost the election, it's seats like this. And the Liberal Party is losing votes to independents all around the country.
And the number of Climate 200 backed or Community Voice backed independents is growing. This election is expanding. They're going to take up more seats.
Maybe the new financing laws that the Coalition and Labor have come to an agreement on might sort of make it easier for the Coalition next time. But,
Apologies. Let's go to Jeremy Fernandez at the big board for a better look at how the state of play is going. Jez.
You know, you take one look at the big board and you can see the scale of what's happened tonight. Let's just fill in what's gone on here. Since we last checked in with the big board, a number more seats have been filled in with colour. So we've seen the safest seats on either end and the most marginal in between. Now, this first column here for Labor was one of the most critical parts of this equation. They needed to hang on to these seats to keep that red wall up, to keep any coalition incursion from making its way onto this side of the board, and they've successfully done that. We've got Labor colouring in almost the entirety of its side of the board and also making waves on coalition territory. They've claimed all these marginals on the coalition side, going all the way up to Leichhardt and then down to Braddon. Braddon has seen a swing of about 15%, so they've made deep inroads into coalition territory. Another notable thing here to see is the number of independents that have been returned to the crossbench. We've got Fowler, Dai Lee retaining there, Curtin, Kooyong, McKellar, Goldstein, Wentworth, Indi, yet again, Warringah, Mayo, Clark. And then we've got Bradfield over here with Nicolette Buller taking that seat off the retiring Paul Fletcher. So let's add in now the seats where we are not in a position to project just yet, but we can see who is ahead. Now, you'll note from that last count, there weren't any Greens on the board, but here's where they are ahead: in Ryan, in metropolitan Brisbane, in Richmond, and that's pretty much it. Also notable here that there is no blue on this side of the board. There is no blue on this side of the board. The onus was on the coalition to gain an extra 19 seats. They've lost 14. Let's take a look at Tasmania as an example of what's happened in that state. There is no blue on the board for Tasmania. The Liberals have been wiped out of the state of Tasmania. I want to check in with Casey Briggs now on what the swing has been looking like in that state and elsewhere in the country. Casey, what does this tell you?
I mean, look at this. This is one of the remarkable results of the evening, Jez. The ALP here with nearly 2/3 of the two-party preferred vote, an 8.5% swing. This is absolutely the standout, but the picture around the nation is swings to Labor everywhere.
Let's take a look at New South Wales. How's that come up?
So again, we're seeing a swing toward Labor, 4.2%. The ALP now have 55.6% of the two-party preferred vote on what we've got at the moment. And look at the seats that they've gained. Hughes, you'd call that Liberal heartland for at least the last few decades. The seat of Banks, the seat of Bennelong. 3 pickups so far in the state of New South Wales.
What about Queensland?
Queensland is another one of these remarkable stories. So the LNP dominate in Queensland.
Yes.
They have been dominating for quite some time. They continue to dominate, but what are the gains here? Bonner, Leichhardt, Longman, Dixon, Peter Dutton's seat, Ford and Petrie. We've got a whole list of Labor gains here. They now hold roughly 1/3 of the seats in Queensland. So a massive thumping there off a 3.5% statewide swing, and they are nearly even on the two-party preferred vote.
I want to take a look at Victoria because the Labor brand for the state government in Victoria has been considered a bit of a liability for this federal campaign. It's remarkable that they've kind of led to this result.
And of course, this was the only mainland state that polls were projecting a swing toward the coalition. Well, that hasn't even happened in Victoria, 2.8% swing toward the government here. Fewer pickups in that state for the Labor Party, but yep, the health of the Labor brand at the state level doesn't seem to have affected this here because we're seeing roughly consistent swings with what we're seeing nationally.
Now, I don't want to kind of guess anything, but South Australia, anything different?
Yeah, it might be the same picture, Jez. Hey, another swing, 5.4% here. Labor have picked up Sturt, and that means Labor hold every single seat in metropolitan Adelaide. It is a wipeout for the Liberal Party in Adelaide, showing you the strength of the brand there, and a nearly 60-40 two-party preferred vote. This is a consistent picture we're seeing nationally.
We've seen a very strong Labor government in Western Australia. The Labor brand there, very, very powerful. And the swing here, what does this tell you? Not quite as strong as the rest of the country.
Yeah, and I'll say this is an early account because a smaller count because the polls closed 2 hours later in Western Australia. Look, a swing toward Labor, a much smaller swing toward Labor, but can I remind you, this is off the back of a 10.5% swing toward Labor last time. So it's difficult to keep growing at that sort of a rate. The expectations might have been you'd see a correction in a state in the West, but we're not seeing that. We're seeing roughly a status quo result.
Casey, thank you very much. Casey Briggs, our election analyst. Thank you very much. I just want to give our viewers a quick glance again at this board. An absolute red wave. Labor holding on this side, washing over the other side. And one of the biggest stories of the night, Dixon, Peter Dutton out of that seat, the most marginal seat in Queensland. The coalition no longer has its leader. Back to you at the desk.
Thanks very much indeed, Jeremy, and the rest of our friends down that end of the studio. PK just mentioned the crucial seat of Melbourne, where Adam Bandt, the Greens leader, is in a tight race.
Yeah, I think he'll probably be fine in the end. It's just that we're a bit short of information. We've got 55% primary. His vote is down to 42%. Now, he did pick up a slice of territory south of the river, which was in around those South Yarra and that sort of Paran, that sort of area. So that would have bit into the Green vote. But Labor's it's a very strong Labor vote for Melbourne in recent years. The Liberals are third. Anthony Koutafidis, 3%. The preferences, we don't have a preference count because tonight they were counting between the Greens and Liberals because they thought that the Liberals would go back into second place as they were recently. Said there's been a surge in the Labor vote. If you take 2/3 of the Liberal vote there, that gets Labor up to about 43. Look, I think Adam Bennett will probably win that. But it's just a sign of the struggles the party has. But next door in Wills, they still have a good chance of winning. Though as the numbers have come in, it's started to project in our model that the Labor Party will hold Wills. But I think Adam Bennett will eventually win, but if something goes wrong, there will probably be no Greens. I think the Elizabeth Watson-Brown, I think it is in Ryan, has the best chance of any of them getting elected. I think they'll lose both Griffith and Brisbane. Yeah,
so he may get back by the skin of his teeth, but he'll be leading a much reduced team in the House. At least it might just be 2 of them instead of 4 of them.
It's actually a bit like the Queensland election. Their vote has gone up overall, but it's fallen in the areas where they do well.
Where they need it. Yeah, no, exactly. All right, now I want to go to South Australia. We'll look at some more seat results coming through. Sturt, we've been keeping an eye on through the night. This is Adelaide's inner eastern suburbs. James Stephens has held it for the Liberals since 2019. Claire Cutterham, however, is a lawyer on the local council as well. Anthony, how's that look now?
Oh, she's won easily. James Stephens' vote is down. He's finishing in second place, 4% behind. 18% there with the Greens. There's a Teal independent, Verity Cooper as well. And the preferences are flowing pretty solidly towards Labor. And 70% of the preferences are going to Labor. And we're projecting Labor's going to come out with a margin of, goodness grief, 9%, Sturt with a 9% Labor margin. That tells you an awful lot about what's going wrong for the Liberal Party in South Australia.
Let's move on to Boothby, to Louise Miller-Frost's seat in the Adelaide southern suburbs.
And this is where Nicole Flint came back to run after she retired at the last election for health reasons. She's run again this time, but it's all to no avail. She's 12% behind on primaries, 18% there with the Greens. And after preferences, we're saying there's a swing of just under 10%. So Boothby, a seat really Labor had fought for years to win. They've now got it with a 13% margin, and that's remarkable. And next, just up the hill in Mayo, the Liberal Party looks certain to drop out of the final 2 in the count, and it will finish as a count between Rebecca Sharkey and the Labor Party by the look of it. So the Commission stopped doing a preference count because of the way the numbers are coming in.
Let's go across to the west and look at a few seats there. The seat of Moore, Ian Goodenough was the Liberal MP. He lost pre-selections. Now standing as an independent. Vince Connolly, who'd previously held the seat of Stirling, he's having a crack at Moore. He was pre-selected for Moore. And then you've got the Labor candidate there, Tom French, as well.
Yes, and what's going on here is, if we look at the first preferences, now Labor's only got, 20 to 30, just over 32% of the vote. But the Liberals are on 30, the Greens are on 12, Ian Goodenough's got 10. We're getting preference counts, and they're suggesting Goodenough's preferences are not flowing strongly to the Liberal candidate. And at this stage, we're saying there's a 5% swing to the Labor Party in Moore. So at this stage, rather than being in danger of losing seats in Western Australia, it looks like the Labor Party are gaining a seat in Western Australia.
To the seat of Canning now in Perth's southeastern suburbs. A little bit of good news for the Liberal Party here, and a very important piece of news. Andrew Hastie, a potential future leader of the Liberal Party.
And certainly he's had one of the best results for the Liberal Party. His primary vote's got a 4 in front of it, which a lot of people in marginal seats haven't been able to do. Labor's under 30. There's a 12% vote there for One Nation, which is assisting the Liberal Party there. And if we look at the preference swing, I think with the swing there's a swing of 5.4% to Andrew Hastie. I don't think there's a lot of seats around the country with a swing to a sitting member for the Liberal Party. And so Andrew Hastie's had a very good result there.
Yes, and perhaps a leadership option for the Liberals to consider as well with what's left. A final one over in the west, Fremantle, Josh Wilson, a safe seat for Labor there. How's he going?
Well, the problem for Labor there is Kate, I think it's Hewlett. She's in second place at the moment. She came very close to winning she's got support from Climate 300. She came very close to, we'll leave it on these numbers for the moment, very close to winning the state seat of Fremantle. At the state election, the Liberal Party directed preferences to Labor. In the state general election, federal election, they were pointing them towards Hewlett. So at this stage, and Green preferences will flow that way as well. I think Josh Wilson, they've got no preference count, so I think Josh Wilson might be in a bit of danger. But what I would say is Hewlett did badly on pre-polls, badly on absent votes, and badly on postals, and that's why she lost at the state election. And Fremantle is a much bigger federal seat than it is a state seat, so you'd need to see a lot more counts. So Josh Wilson's got a bit of a fight on his hand. I just noticed we've got it quite definitely won by him, so I'm not quite sure about that. We've still got the Liberal count coming in. But Fremantle is one seat. The Labor Party's in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, a couple of seats still to watch there in the West. Antony, thank you. We are quickly approaching the end of the night. Let's see where we are.
You're watching Australia Votes, live from the ABC Election Centre.
It's just gone 11 o'clock in the east and 9 in the west. And to recap, after only 2.5 hours of counting earlier tonight, we called it the Albanese government returned. The only doubt remaining at the time was how many seats. So let's take you through a truly stark, even historic evening. Figures that racked up tonight.
With half of all votes counted, here's what the next parliament will look like. Remember, a majority is 76. Labor's on track to secure something like 86 or 87 seats, looking across at a depleted opposition bench, which might barely get to 40.
That's driven by a two-party preferred vote that tonight grew to 56% and then stayed there. As the nationwide swing, the ALP had a little under a 4% gain. The losses, brutal and widespread for the coalition, starting with its leader, Peter Dutton. He's gone after more than 2 decades in Parliament, and he has taken responsibility tonight for his party's wider woes.
Those woes are wide indeed. Down in New South Wales, senior Liberal frontbencher David Coleman, most recently the shadow foreign minister, is down and probably out. In Bass, the contagion has spread to South Australia. In the seat of Sturt, Liberal James Stevens' vote has crashed by almost 19%. Labor's Claire Clutterham is set to be the new member there. There'll be others too. Senior Dutton confidant Michael Sukkar is gone in his Melbourne seat of Deakin.
And the ructions don't end with the coalition either. It's been a pretty turbulent night for the Greens, we were just discussing. We're not calling it, but their leader, Adam Bant, does appear to be in a pretty tight spot, tighter than normal, in his seat of Melbourne. Astonishing figures. They're the stuff of landslides, except this time, unusually, it's towards rather than away from a sitting government.
To Antony Green for his final summary.
Actually, I'll just start with an anecdote about luck in politics. Anthony Albanese became a leader after the 2019 election. I think it's fair to say the party members and the party caucus didn't necessarily embrace him as the one who was going to lead him to the promised land. In the middle of 2020, in the middle of COVID, they had a by-election in Eden Monaro, which Labor only just scraped over the line. The Liberals drew last spot on the ballot paper. The Labor Party had a much better spot. And if you go through the tickets, it was the donkey vote that got Labor over the line. Luck. And 65 years later, he got this. I mean, it's just shows you sometimes right place, right time. And he got through that challenge. And today, he's just got one of the biggest victories in Labor history. Right, Mike.
Yes, give us the final take. It's a very good point, though.
The Labor Party is still around 35%, the Coalition around 31%. The Greens on 12.6%, but it's not very strong in the seats they held. 12.2% for others, 6% for One Nation. It's been slipping. There's more pre-polls and urban figures coming in. The change in vote there, the Labor vote up to the Coalition down 4.5%. Smattering to other parties, translating into a two-party preferred, 55.8 for Labor, 3.7. I do suspect that will come down. I've been looking at some of the pre-poll figures. They are a bit worse for Labor than last time, but nothing that's going to turn around those numbers. Let's have a look at the chamber. fill in the seats, which were definitely won. Labor's on 87, 39 for the Coalition, and 12 others. As I said, the Greens haven't confirmed any of their victories yet, but I suspect they will win at least one seat and perhaps two. If we look at the seats which are leaning a bit further, we've got a few more leanings. Labor's up to 89, the Coalition on 39. I just wanted to have a quick look at, not changing, the members, defeated members. And it's a sea of blue. David Coleman, some front benches: David Coleman, Bridget Archer, Ross Vasta, Michael Sukkar, Peter Dutton, of course, Bert Van Manen. I mean, losing Ford is a disaster for the Liberal Party. Hughes, for the first time in 30 years, Labor's won. Hughes, Longman, the seat they've been trying to get back. Oh, good grief. Menzies. I'd less certain about that. Well, I've got to go through all the numbers after the election and have a good after tonight and do that. Both Russell Broadbent and Ian Goodenough. Russell Broadbent, I think he'll be defeated, but Ian Goodenough definitely. Luke Howarth, who's held on in Petrie for years, and James Stephens. And just on the other side, let's see what the other side of this looks like on the new members. It's all red. Ji Soon in Banks. I did practice that, but I can't remember it at 11:30. But she has one pardon. Sorry, it's a great victory for you. I'm sorry I've lost the pronunciation. Jess Teasdale in Bass. It's my last election, so you can all abuse me now. Cara Cook in Bonner. Anne Urquhart, who's transferred from the Senate. Nicolette Buller, I think, will win Bradfield again. Have a look at later figures. Bassam Adbo in Cornwall. Matt Gregg in Deakin. Ali France. Rowan Holzberger, after a number of tries, has won. Gordon, Alice Jordan Brain, Tom Venning and David Batt have inherited seats from retiring members. David Moncrief in Hughes, who's the complete surprise to me. Matt Smith, possibly expected. Longman, Rhiannon Douglas. Alison Penfold is a new National in line. Rebecca White, Joe Brisky, a new Liberal in McPherson. And Monash, I'm not sure about, a lot more counting to come there. Labor's potentially winning Menzies, Tom French in Moore, and Julianne Campbell in Moreton, a seat which was marginal, has now got a margin above 15%. So, I mean, this is just, if I'm going out in an election, this is an extraordinary one to go out on.
I was going to say that. I was about to say that, Anthony. It's put on a show for you, Australian democracy, for your last hurrah. But don't run away just yet.
The computer's been a bit better.
It was a bit patchy earlier on.
My blood pressure would have been down.
Look, when you've got Antony Green, who needs a computer? Right?
ABC News will keep updating results as they come in. You can find those at abc.net.au/news. I'm Sarah Ferguson. Thanks for your company.
And I'm David Spears. Join me and the Insiders team for more news and analysis tomorrow morning. But for now, good night.
Good night.